Well, here we go.
Eat. But what makes food even more exciting is that it's a unique outlet for cultural expression. It's rarely the case that any countries, regions, or heck, even individual families approach food the same way. Food is just a huge carrier for culture. For instance, if you live in the great melting pot that's the United States, the foods that are popular here largely reflect both the local culture and cultural heritage of the people that live there. New York-style pizza and Chicago-style pizza are things because both cities have huge Italian-American population.
Okay, so real quick, I think I might be wrong on this one, but from what I've known like about Thai food, especially like in America, it's probably the most like backed up by like if you apply for business, like in general for money to like open a Thai food restaurant, it's like super supportive. Like, and I think depending where in what city, which I'm pretty sure, but overall like Thai food has been very easily like most accommodated from what I've seen, and like from talking to like one of our friends who's a restaurant owner, she was like, yeah, it was like the easiest to like get through to do.
And you have a number of major US cities like New York, San Francisco, and Seattle that have Chinatown districts, where Chinese cuisine obviously is going to feature heavily. And then there's the fact that Mexican Americans make up nearly 1/4 of the US's population. So it's really no surprise that Chinese, Mexican, and Italian are the 3 most popular ethnic cuisines in the United States. But then we get down to the 4th entry on the list, and we discover ourselves a bit of an outlier: Thai food. Now, while the US has certainly welcomed its fair share of Thai immigrants over the years, Thai cuisine really seems to be punching way above its weight class in terms of popularity. Because while Thai restaurants might be catching on big in the US, there isn't really a big Thai population to match it. In 2018, it was estimated that there were around 5,300 Thai restaurants in the US, when US Census data reported only 300,000 Thai people in the US. That's a ratio of 57 Thai American people for every Thai restaurant. For comparison, look at the ratio of Mexican...
Yo, that's really low. Hang on, when was this made? When was this video made? Oh, this was literally today. This was published today. You're just gonna come to my house? That's very okay. So what makes it so interesting about this is that in my head I thought it's way more, like a lot more, but this is actually a lower number, and I didn't expect. That's super interesting. I didn't know that.
American people, 36.6 million, to Mexican restaurants in the same year, 54,000. That gives us a ratio of 678 Mexican Americans for every Mexican restaurant. Things get even weirder though when you look at where in America Thai restaurants are really taking off. For example, the city of Fairbanks, Alaska has a population of only 32,000, but with a whopping 24 Thai restaurants. The city seems to be absolutely obsessed with Thai food, so you might expect it to be a Thai immigration hub, but if you look at the census data, that's not the case. In fact, the Thai population in Fairbanks is so small that ethnic groups that make up only 0.35% of the population are listed ahead of it in the census data. I bring up these examples because they point to something that bucks historic trends. America's multi-ethnic food culture has, in pretty much every case, been the result of different ethnic groups from around the world coming to America and bringing their food with them. But here we have an exceptional case of Thai food showing up even when Thai people aren't. So I gotta ask, what's really going on here? And the answer is gastro-diplomacy. Nope, that's not the name of a new Pokemon. It's managing international relations by way of food. That's right, the prevalence of Thai restaurants in the US is the result of a deliberate effort by Thailand's government to win the hearts and minds of the American people. And here's the thing, theorists, it's working. As a matter of fact, it is working big time. So I get it, all the
Okay, so from my understanding, like I guess they're more popular due to tourism, and they're trying to push that agenda. Now, I think the hardest part about Thai food is that I think the flavor, that might be a bar. Hold on. But overall, like I think it's hard to like create that kind of like. I think Thai food has such a unique like flavor in general. Like, and I'm not saying they're being biased, but like when I eat, it definitely say it's very different, because people always get like I think the most common mistake that I always get from people is spice. So, you know, spicy is flavor and spicy is hot, right? But then like Thai in general, like when you're talking about spicy hot, is so different. And I feel like it's so unique because for some reason, I think Thai food, when it's spicy, like it's more edible. Like it's just more, it tastes better and better and better every time. And there's like that hot spicy, which is like way too hot, and it's just there's no flavor. So I think that's what makes it so
This
unique
foreign
to
government gastro-diplomacy stuff kind of sounds like it would be a half-baked parody of a conspiracy theory, but it's 100% true. According to Medium.com, quote, the Thai
you're right,
government
it is
has
good
funded
spicy.
and supported thousands of restaurants around the world that make authentic Thai food through the Global Thai Program. One of the earliest instances of reporting on this came in the Wall Street Journal back in 2001. At the time, Thailand's deputy commerce minister detailed an ambitious plan to launch more than 3,000 restaurants worldwide. He described the plan saying, quote, we want to be like the McDonald's of Thai food. Now, when Thailand's deputy commerce minister is talking about wanting to bring a McDonald's-like approach to exporting Thai food worldwide, he's probably not talking about McDonald's' culinary style, but rather the idea of standardization. McDonald's, whether you love it or hate it, is something that's predictable.
It's affordable, it's consistent. I can walk into a McDonald's in Nigeria, order chicken McNuggets. When I bite into it, you know what it's gonna taste like? It's gonna taste like home.
The point of having a brand like McDonald's is letting people know what they can expect, unless you're in Greece and you try their McYero.
Sorry, sidetrack. So this is so the funny thing about this whole like that joke just now was the only thing I thought of was this comedian. He was traveling, and then he was traveling to Europe, and the only thing that was like to him that was a US embassy was a Subway. So he went to a Subway in Europe, like the Subway sandwich, and that was the only joke that I could think of I related to was like when you eat like American food, you think of American. Like you think of home, just exactly like it. But the point was he went there because it was the only place that he believed it spoke English, and it was American food.
And it McSucks. I mean, it's the same reason why all food theory thumbnails use the same font and have the same logo in the corner. It's about presenting you with something familiar, something recognizable, a consistent experience. And the planners in charge of Thailand's gastro-diplomacy efforts decided that if Thai food was really gonna catch on worldwide, then Thai restaurants needed to deliver a consistent experience. Dr. Mark Padumpat, a professor of Asian and Asian American Studies at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, describes it like this.
Crazy.
They train
No
chefs,
way.
they export them to like everywhere to open restaurants and to work in restaurants. You know, it's to stimulate tourism to Thailand, but it's also to try to standardize
The guys
Thai
from
taste
UNLV,
around the
how
world
crazy.
because
I didn't
the
know that.
government also feels like the different kinds of Thai food around the world has given it somewhat of a bad name, and so they're trying to standardize this Thai flavor. I mean, you know, it's part of their economic national development plan.
Now, that last part, about this being part of Thailand's economic national development plan, is the important part. Because trying to get the world hooked on your nation's food isn't just something that you do for the funsies. After all, there's a reason that we led this story by talking about the country's deputy commerce minister. Thailand's culinary exports are responsible for sizable contributions to the Thailand economy. Take, for example, the fact that in 2001, Thailand was earning more than $6 billion a year from food-related exports, with the
Wow.
biggest boom coming from the growth
Didn't
of
know
herbs
that.
and spices like kaffir lime leaves and
Subway is
galangal
the biggest chain
roots,
in
the
the
sort
world?
of
I didn't
plants
know
that
that.
are native to
That's
Thailand
funny.
and that aren't usually dietary staples for people in America. See, when more Thai restaurants open abroad, they're not just spreading Thai culture and improving the image of the country, they're also creating lots of businesses that import their ingredients directly from Thailand. And they get
So okay, hang on, backtrack. So this is actually a weird issue that I've noticed, like getting ingredients from Thailand to be distributed like in Vegas or in stuff like that. There's some ingredients that are not in there, and we have to actually, not we, sorry, I talk as if I'm like part of this whole restaurant chain. I'm not. So to clarify, there's actually some ingredients that are replaced and they're not actually deliverable. I don't remember what was the main reason, but I do remember like it's not like, so it's very interesting that they say that. So in general, like not every ingredient is delivered. So like the worst experience I think I had as a Thai food was going to Utah, like try cooking similar Thai edition. I would fail that hardcore because nobody believes in my cooking. So to go back, self roast. So to go back, we were driving to Utah, and then there was like a restaurant in like I think it was like Cedar City, and like the Thai food is not even like Thai food. Like it tastes like there's no flavor. It's just bland, and I think it's so hard to replicate when you don't have the correct ingredients. So yeah, that's this very interesting part of the video. Yeah. Utah scares me.
People in those countries hooked on flavors that they won't be able to satisfy without buying them directly from the source. And this right here is the commercial brilliance of the Thai government strategy. They're not sticklers about presenting authentic Thai dishes to the rest of the world. They're more concerned with presenting the general flavors and ingredients from Thai culture. This allows them to present a more easily accessible version of Thai cuisine, specifically one that is way less spicy. As the deputy commerce minister describes the relationship Americans have with certain Thai dishes like tom yum soup, quote, "It's supposed to be spicy, very spicy, but in America, they make it mild. Maybe they like it that way, but it's not traditional tom yum anymore." See, in the same way
Okay, sorry, I keep like stopping, but because this is like something I could relate. So I was working in a restaurant, and this is where like people don't understand that it's gonna be mild. So tom yum soup cannot be not spicy. It's default cannot. And I was serving at this Thai restaurant one time, and this customer comes in. For this, how many times are you gonna pause? Okay, I'll pause like less. We're like what, 3 minutes left. Okay, so real quick. So this customer says, "Hey, I want tom yum soup, not spicy." And I told him it cannot be not spicy. It's the best you're gonna get is spicy 1. This is 1 through 10, not 1 through 5, 1 through 10. It's very like the spice at 1. The flavor is so good. Like, oh my god, like damn. Speaking of that, man, I feel I'm actually want to eat tom yum tomorrow. Dang it, I hate you guys. Felix, thanks, man. So the moment so when the food arrived, he had literally one taste. This guy literally took one sip and he goes, "I can't eat this. This is too spicy." I'm like, bro, like what are you expecting in Thai food? Like it's like he should order like tom kha. Oh dude, I was so mad. And I was like, dude, this is what you're tasting. Like this is the best part of the food. It's like mild spice. Like mild spice is really good. Like I think if you're like not a big like adventurous person when it comes to spicy food, but that was like I was so mad. And I wasn't mad because the food was Felix, thank you so much for the gifted undefeated queen. Brandon, welcome to the party. So yeah, it's hard to understand. There's some dishes that you cannot avoid. It will be spicy 1, and like you don't have to like freak. I think if you eat this, it's good for you. I think it's a good way to like break like the barrier of like flavors, like you know what you could try and what you not try, stuff like that.
That fortune cookies and chop suey are associated with Chinese food despite both being American creations, Thai restaurants have developed their own westernized versions of Thai food that aren't necessarily representative of the food that you'd actually get if you ordered the same dish in a restaurant in Bangkok. But here's the good news for those of you who are hoping for a real authentic taste of Thailand. Even if the Thai food that restaurants are serving up to Americans may not be giving you the real authentic Thai experience, it's been improving over time, especially with the increased accessibility of ingredients. For example,
stop right here. This is okay. Look, okay, check this out. This is very interesting. Okay, so talking about, I'll pause again. I'm sorry. So when you talk about authenticity and like eating like Thai food, so if you eat in the US, right, there's like standards, right? Like health standards, cleanliness standards, which is like super there. This lady, you see this lady right here? She's cooking. See this? She's making food in the river. You see this river right here? You see how dirty this is? This is what like when you're eating Thai food, I literally can't like kid you not. This is like legit. This is the river and like they're cooking. And you know how they wash the dishes? Dunking that plate in the river. I'm not a pissed. I'm just letting you know like this is normal. Now, if this was to do in US, hell no. Shit is shut down for like the month or like the day or whatever the fuck it is. Like you lose all credibility. But it's funny because people will like have such a weird standard, but then if you go to Thailand and you like eat on like the streets, like you're like, nah, this is normal. Pollution, flying rats could be walking, cockroaches could be flying, like shit's everywhere, but you'll be okay with it because it's the authenticity. That's sometimes it blows my mind, but yeah.
Prior to the 1970s, most Thai food made in America wasn't made the same way it was in Thailand,
Yep,
simply
that's
because
true.
a lot of the ingredients like fish sauce and kaffir lime leaves weren't easily accessible in North America. But since then, North America has started to import produce from Thailand and many other parts of Southeast Asia, not just as a culinary import, but as an agricultural product. As early as the 1990s, there have been more and more cases of Thai-owned produce companies growing Southeast Asian produce in California and Mexico, which has only continued to trend upward. That means it's getting easier for Thai restaurants that do want to go for an authentic presentation to create the same flavors that you'd find in the country of origin. From the perspective of the Thai government, though, it doesn't matter. After all, revenue is revenue. And if the restaurant effort is ultimately in the interest of gastro-diplomacy, the main goal is that when
Really
Americans
Snorlax.
drive to the Thai restaurant at their local strip mall, they leave with an overall favorable impression that makes them ever so slightly more predisposed to spend money on goods from Thailand, or maybe one day make it a vacation destination. So whenever you find yourself booking plane tickets to Thailand, stop for a moment to consider the fact that the Thai government successfully manipulated your stomach to get you there. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. You know, as someone whose job prioritizes eating whole Christmas trees and infusing Mountain Dew into pizza
Eat a
dough,
Christmas
stay tuned
tree.
for that one, friends. It's safe to assume that I do not get all of the essential vitamins and minerals one needs to be a functioning human
this a
being.
sponsorship
That is why I
commercial?
use and am super grateful to today's sponsor, Ritual Vitamins. Ritual is the
Okay, so that was the end of that was a commercial. Okay, so going back, like, so this is the interesting part. The dishes that you like, if that's more American, not Americanized, but like to make you hooked, is a lot more sweet. Like, I think a lot of Thai restaurants make it a lot more sweeter than usual, and then like, dude, it's like, it's you're hooked. Not just because of the spice, but like it's a little bit sweeter. So like when you taste it, you're like, yo, this is really good. But you don't know what it is. But I'm pretty sure it's because my wife and I discuss about this, and with some of us discuss about this. Like, if the dish is a little bit more sweeter, most people come back just naturally like Thai food. Like, so okay, that was a good video, Felix. Thank you. That was super interesting. Change the screen away from the ad. Oh, change the screen away from the. It's okay. I'll just cut it off right here. A ritual. not sponsored. Not sponsored. Adding sugar, dude, it's insane. But you know what also could be hooked? MSG. Like, you know, when you just like sprinkle like MSG down. Like when you sprinkle MSG down, that thing makes you hooked. You're like, it's like full cracked. I'll put that on YouTube. Thank you, Felix, for the video.